Sorry we're not with you guys tonight. Jeff is finishing up a revival at one of our sporting churches. He's been preaching since Sunday morning, and it's really powerful. God's really been with him, and appreciate you praying for him tonight at 7 as he finishes up the revival. He's had one man accept Christ on Monday night, and that's been really great. And there's been a lot of hearts that have moved and a lot of things going on. But I wanted to finish up this particular Kim's Corner about God tells us to never go back to seeing ourselves only as victims of every situation. Um, it's kind of funny. It's really a hard one for me to do today. It's been a rough day, um, struggling with some things that I can't do anything about and I can't change, and the expectations on me are totally ridiculous. But yet, it's just one of those things, one of those complex family dynamics that you don't need to know all the details about, but you can just definitely pray for me. We will be heading back to Charlotte tomorrow, and we'll both be happy about that. My father is coming home tomorrow from rehab. It's been 5 weeks, and he is coming home. Uh, so we're really happy about that, and hopefully he can get the care that he needs here and be able to take care of himself. And so that's really good. Um, I wanted to quickly review and start out with the verse in James chapter 1, verses 2 through 4. Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. And let steadfastness have its full effect. And we talked about that last week, and that sometimes we move out of situations way too quickly. We don't allow grace and the tension and the growing its full effect. And that's what that's talking about. And let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. As Christians, every situation we find ourselves in has the defining element of completion. Another piece of the puzzle. It's like, all of our situations, whether they're hard ones, whether they're good ones, whatever they are, we need to constantly be present, wholly present in our situations. That does start with attitude, and that is in the counting it all joy, consider it joy when you're facing trials. And that makes no sense at all, because trials usually do not feel good. They're difficult. They strain us. It's a lot of effect on even our physical bodies and our mind, our well-being, everything. Tough situations can be used to remove our weaknesses and patterns that are currently getting in our way. And that's one of the reasons to let trials have their perfect work. Second thing is that trials produce maturity. None of us are completely mature, and we won't be until we get to heaven if we're Christians. Eventually, if we allow the trials to do what they're supposed to do in our lives, they will produce maturity. When we quit or we never try again, when things get hard, we're in a tough situation and we try something and it doesn't work, or it backfires, or it messes up, or it makes us feel bad, or makes us feel like failures. Oftentimes we just quit and we never try again. That's when we can't grow. We never learn when we quit like that. Learning a skill requires the tension from the learning. Learning a skill requires the tension from the learning. Tension is part of growth. The third thing is that it ends with God's love. And that's the other part of James chapter 1 verse 4, where it says, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives generously. That word generously is exactly what it sounds like. It's just, it's more than you can imagine. We are given wisdom generously to handle the situations, to be able to guide us through the tough times. Even sometime when we're walking down a path seemingly and we can't even see the next step, That's what faith is when we take that next step, when we know we're on the right path of it. It might be hard, might be lonely, it might be overwhelming, it might be just tearing us apart, but we know it's what we're supposed to do. He says he gives generously to all without reproach. And that without reproach is that God's not making fun of us. He's not wagging his finger at us. He's not accusing us of being immature. He knows we are. He created us. He knows us. We can't fool him. So without reproach and generously, and it will be given him. If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given to him. He wants us to be complete in our abilities, and that will take some redos, some makeovers, and tons of his wisdom. And that is the way we learn and grow. God knows that we need to grow and get better, and at the same time, he accepts us as we are. So he knows, he sees us. He sees our weaknesses. He sees where we need a completion. He sees that, and he'll bring things into our lives that will allow that to happen. Sometimes, though, we get into trials, we get frozen, we get stuck when we know what we need to change, but we see failures, or we go through a trial and we mess up and we don't really know what's going on, so we just kind of quit. And then we deal with the guilt of not being enough. We feel like we're not good enough. We might feel guilty. We might feel shame. That's when the growth is hampered. We feel, like I'm never going to get it right. And that's not what God tells us in his word. He says he will give us the wisdom. He will give us the grace. So to save ourselves from more pain when we are in these situations that are real difficult, oftentimes is when we look outward. We look outward for the cause of our problems. We look at other people. We look at our situations. We blame others for our failures. Now, it's not to say that sometimes it could be completely out of our hands. That's not what we're saying. There are situations and there are people in our lives that are so difficult that we have nothing to do. We're not the ones making them difficult. The situation that I'm dealing with, it has really nothing to do with me. It's completely out of my hands. Yet there's ridiculous expectations of me, and I have to learn where my boundaries are there, and I have to learn what I can do and what I can't do, and ask for God's wisdom and just move on from that. We must stop and ask ourselves in any situation, what do I need to do to change? What do I need to change in order to change things? This introspective analysis is the only way our lives are going to be different. The only way we can put a stop to allowing critical people with addictions that might just embed themselves into our lives, mean people, highly dependent, draining people, situations that overwhelm us, the things that occur over and over and over that are negative in our lives. The only way we can put a stop to this, to rock our lives, is to really go and say, what do I need to change in order that change might happen? Now, we're not saying here, neither was Henry saying, he's very clear in his book that you are the cause of every bad thing that happens to you, because there is a lot of abuse and a lot of neglect and abandonment, mistreatment, crime that happens that has absolutely nothing to do with us. That's not the issue here. That's not the kind of things we're talking about here. Please talk to me if you need that clarified. But even in those situations, God's the rescuer. Read Psalm 34:17 and 18. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted, and he saves those who are crushed in spirit. Ever been crushed in spirit and just feel like you just can't go on? God says he's the rescuer. He's the one that is close to us, and he's the one that saves us, even when our spirits are really broken and we don't know what else to do. Even if we find ourselves in negative situations or destructive patterns, we are not powerless victims ever. Scripture never says that. It never indicates that. That's a lie from the deceiver, Satan himself, to tell us that something's not going to work, that something can't be different. That's not going to work. To say that a situation will always get better, as Jeff and I were talking earlier about my situation, some of it's not going to get better. until Jesus comes, until heaven. That's when that's going to be reckoned. So when people tell you it'll get better, some situations, guys, doesn't get better. Not here on earth. It might take heaven for that to happen. And that just has to be okay. But God designed our lives to be full, rich, and challenging. And He never frowns on us for our need for that learning, for our need to mature, for our need to grow. He doesn't look down at us and taunt us or wag his finger at us because we're not mature. Never think that. All he says there, as he says in James 1, is ask me. I can give you the wisdom that you need to get through this trial, to learn what you need to learn, to get out of these destructive patterns. Ask me. So I hope, guys, that we can move forward in those truths in our lives and not continue to be victims and not continue to find ourselves in the same destructive places or with the same destructive people that are going to keep us from God's true purpose in our lives. We are meant to give a hand down and to help people. We are meant to bless people with our lives. We are meant to help. But there are some things we cannot do for others. That we cannot change another person, and we cannot force them to walk the way we feel like they need to walk. We can't force some situations. We have to know ourselves. We have to understand who we are in Christ, and we have to ask for His great wisdom day after day. Guys, we miss you, and God bless, and we look forward to being back with you next week, okay? Thanks.